back to my YouTube channel. For those of y'all who are new here, welcome. My name is Mogi Beth and I own a six-figure reselling business, and I also create resources and tools to help others in their reselling journey. Right now, we actually have a 50 BOLO brand list that's completely free. We also have a $25 spreadsheet that I think is so useful. And we have a really valuable Poshmark course all available on mogibeth.com. And if you're brand new to Poshmark, use my code MOGIBETH when you download the app and you'll get $10 off your first purchase. Today's video is a culmination of monthly videos that I've been doing since February of this year. And this will be my last monthly video in the series, so I want to give a big thank you to everyone who has been tuning in for all of them. But this video, I've actually made the decision to discuss something that I've actually never had before. Usually I just share my sales numbers, meaning my top line revenue. But today, I'm actually going to share my numbers after my platform fees and shipping, and I'm going to share my annual numbers after cost of goods. There's still two main other expenses that I won't be sharing. I'm not going to share how much I spend on my lease, and I'm not going to share how much I pay my employees, mainly because that would really be a breach of confidentiality and privacy for them. But for your reference, I have had a lease on my office space all of this year, and then I hired a part-time employee in March and they transitioned into full-time in July. So if you want to calculate rough estimates for your own purposes, there you go. But the reason I decided I wanted to share this information in this video in particular is because unlike other professions, you can't go on to Glassdoor. You can't just Google how much a reseller makes within a year. So just like any business that you start, a reselling venture is fraught with risk and uncertainty. And so having any kind of point of reference, I think, is really helpful. And I know that because even throughout my own reselling career, I've really been looking for that as well. So really that's what I hope to accomplish by sharing this information. I want to empower y'all to know that making money doing this is very possible. And I also just want to present a realistic idea of what this looks like. However, and this is a big however, I really need y'all to know that I am not sitting here saying I represent the very heights of what is possible. There are resellers who have much more impressive numbers than I do, and I plan on having much more impressive numbers next year. But the thing is, and I had to remind myself of this because it really feels like it's been a lifetime, but this was only my second year reselling full time. So, looking at my numbers with that in mind, I am really proud. And the difference between year one and year two is major. So I'm really excited to see what's to come for year three. All right, having said all that, let's go over the agenda for today's video real quick, and then we'll jump right into it. Okay, so first I'm gonna share my numbers from December because I've got to share my monthly numbers, and this is the last one of the year. And then next I'm going to share my numbers for the year, the numbers that I mentioned earlier. Then I really want to discuss three massively important takeaways from this year that allowed this business to grow in the way that it did. And then the very last thing I want to touch on in this video, because y'all were asking, is why I'm choosing to no longer share this information on a monthly basis, and going over briefly what to expect in 2021. All right, so let's jump into it. For December, and I'm just gonna list these numbers off, my total sales number was $15,599.75. And that's a substantial increase from my disappointing November month, with an increase of $3,869.96. So let's break it down by platform. I had 12,548 sales on Poshmark. Then I had $1,758 in sales on eBay. And then next I had $1,293.75 from Tradesy, and I actually didn't have any sales on Mercari in the month of December. So if you remember my November sales video, my goal for December was consistency. I really wanted to consistently list, and as per usual now, that meant listing 600 items, and I actually came really close. I listed 563 items, which with the holidays I'm really happy with. especially since I only actually listed 162 items in November, so that's an increase of about 400. So having that increase will really help us going into 2021. Okay, I'm gonna pop up a graph here from the month of December. As you can see, nothing too crazy to make note of. We did have a few great sales days, but overall, just a pretty typical, steady, consistent month, which was my goal. So we sold a total of 258 items with an average sales price of $60.46. And ideally, I'd like that number sold to be higher, but I think it wasn't higher just because of our poor performance in November. So the increase in the average sales price really did help, and that was mainly because I was selling actually a lot of expensive cocktail dresses, which I assume was for New Year's Eve. You know, where they were going to party for New Year's Eve, I don't know, but I wasn't gonna complain. So overall, not a bad month. And then the last number that I like to talk about is our average sales days, or on average how long it took for our items to sell. And our average was 91 with a median of 58. Okay, so summarizing my thoughts for December, I really am happy with it. I projected my sales were going to be about $15,000, so I actually surpassed that number. However, in 2021, I really want to have $30,000 sales month, so that's about twice what I'm doing now. So while I'm happy with where we're at, I'm also hungry for more. Okay, so let's move on to what I know y'all are actually here for, my annual numbers. Okay, so as the title of the video suggested, or gave away really, you know my total sales numbers for the year. Our total sales was $143,426.12. And this represents my sales on Poshmark, eBay, Mercari, Tradesy, and actually a few sales on eBay, but it doesn't include things like consignment on places like ThredUP or the RealRail, which is also something that I do. And then it also doesn't include other revenue streams like YouTube, our AdSense from YouTube, our course, our spreadsheet, sponsorships, affiliate links, etc. And actually none of those other revenue streams even existed before this year. And at the beginning of this year, it was really important for me to start diversifying my income. And that was in order to mitigate any risks associated with each one. And also just because I really do enjoy kind of starting new businesses, starting new projects, and then watching them grow. So if I had only focused on just reselling in 2020, wouldn't have done YouTube, wouldn't have done the course, my numbers would be so much higher. Because by August, I really didn't have to go into the office most days because my employee was really well trained at that point and well versed in their responsibilities. And so I really shifted my focus to resource creation and worked on reselling about 3 to 4 hours a day. And to be honest, I still work on reselling about 3 to 4 hours each and every day, which really isn't that much. And so we'll talk more about that in a bit, but I wanted to provide some reference so that you know how much I'm actually working on reselling. This is really the reason why I shifted from introducing myself as a full-time reseller on YouTube to introducing myself as the owner of a six-figure reselling business. Because while I do make a full-time income from reselling, I don't work full-time hours. And so I think that's one beautiful thing about the business that I've been able to create this past year. And for those of y'all wondering, Matt really doesn't do any of the reselling, and Matt's my life partner and business partner. He's really focused more on the other sides of things, especially the course and the spreadsheet. When it comes to reselling, it's me, my employee, and my virtual assistant. And nowadays, like I said, I don't even work full-time hours on reselling. So okay, let's get back to the numbers. Okay, so while revenue was $143,426.12, after our platform fees and shipping costs, that earnings total was $112,214.99. And that difference is pretty significant, and that's why a lot of resellers are moving to their own online store, you know, we pay Poshmark 20%, and really that's a pretty hefty commission. So I think it's really important to remember that and keep that in mind as resellers. We are really providing Poshmark and all of these platforms their revenue. That's how they make money. Okay, and then my profit after my cost of goods, but before my other expenses that I mentioned earlier, was $83,476.45. And there are some of y'all that are gonna think that's a lot, and then there's some of y'all that are gonna think that's not very much. But I'll let you interpret that however you want. Like I said, I'm very proud of it, and it makes me really hopeful for 2021, and here's why. So let's take a look at this graph. This shows the growth over the course of 2020. As you can see, I started 2020 in January with just over $6,000 in sales, and then it grew slowly over time. Of course, COVID affected us during March and April, but as you can see, there's a big difference between the first half of our year and the second half of our year. The first 6 months, we grossed $51,507.97. And then in the last 6 months, we grossed $91,918.15. And these two halves illustrate the major steps that we took in order to grow our business that I want to discuss later on in the video, and they're big reasons why we're excited going into 2021. Because the first and the second half of the year, really Mogi Beth, our reselling business, looked and performed like two completely different businesses. For context, December of 2019, we had about $5.5 thousand worth of sales. And then as I mentioned in January, we had a little over 6,000. But this year, in December 2020, we had 15.6 thousand in sales. And it's the 3rd of January right now, and we already have 2,000 in sales going into 2021. So going forward, we actually project that 12 months trailing July 2021, we will eclipse that 6-figure mark in gross profits. And for the fiscal year of 2021, we will achieve that 6-figure EBIT, which is what we'll take home after we pay our employees and our lease, but before taxes. So if 2019 was a year I was treating reselling like a full-time job, 2020 was the year I started treating reselling like a business. And I think that was a really important distinction and transition to make. Every course I create, including the one available now on mogibeth.com, is really designed with that intention in mind. Because when you treat reselling as a job, there's a definite cap to your growth. But not only that, but in my experience, when you treat it like a job, it's also just much less enjoyable because you end up working 100% in your business instead of working on your business. In working on your business in terms of strategizing, planning, forecasting, etc., is, I think, absolutely essential to growth, especially sustainable growth. Okay, so I want to talk about 3 of the most important takeaways that were essential in producing the results that my business had this year. One of the key components of my transition to treating reselling more like a business was understanding how to maximize our efficiency, especially with regards to time. I've mentioned on this channel before that when you reach a certain point, time becomes your most precious resource. And when that happens, you really have to take a step back and evaluate how you're really spending that precious resource. One of the concepts that helped us most in our evaluation is something called opportunity cost. And opportunity cost is taught on the very first day of basically any Econ 101 course, and it's defined as the loss of potential gain from other alternatives when one alternative is chosen. In layman's terms, choosing something costs you the opportunity to gain from choosing something else. Meaning, when you spend time on one task, you're essentially taking time away from other tasks. When applied to reselling, this means, and this is really important, just because you're doing something for your business does not mean that you are doing the best thing for your business. An example that I know we're all guilty of, myself included, is the question of, do I really need to go sourcing when I have a massive death pile waiting to be processed? And I know time and time again, I've fallen into the trap of justifying my work by telling myself that I'm doing something for my business because That means it must be productive and helpful. But again, I'm often costing myself the opportunity to do the activities that will actually move the needle. So yes, thrifting is fun and it's a really essential part of the job. But if you could imagine a world where you only thrifted and never listed, you would constantly be in the red. You'd be losing money instead of making it. And that is one of the ways that we like to think about how we approach our time and our resources within our business. Okay, so imagine, if you will, that we had a graph where the x-axis represents the time spent doing the activity, and then the y-axis represents the contribution to your output. Okay, so you'd see a series of lines that represent all of the things you need to do as a reseller in order to make money. There's sourcing, processing, photographing, listing, sales generation activities, etc. Each one of these actions, as we know, work in conjunction with one another in order to produce the results that we want. And this requires us to pick and choose the optimal combination of points among these individual graphs using the finite amount of time that we have as business owners in order to achieve the maximum output in the aggregate. And this leads me to my second takeaway that I want to share with y'all, and that is that the best way to maximize efficiency within your reselling business is through systematization, which is much easier to understand than it is to say. To systematize your business means to break up each individual activity into standard operating procedures. The analogy that I think is most helpful in order to understand this concept is the idea of a cooking recipe. This is how it was explained to me, and I think it's really helpful. Okay, so I've actually had 2 cooking blogs within my lifetime, and so for anyone who's written a recipe, you know there's a fine art in conveying exactly what tools to use, what resources and ingredients you'll need, and then each individual step must not only be written to clearly convey what you need to do, but it also needs to anticipate anything that could go wrong. Okay, so let's take baking a tray of cookies, for example. You'll need to know all the ingredients, the steps of when to add all those ingredients together, how much time should be spent on each step, alternative options. So for instance, if you have a convection oven versus a conventional oven, etc. This is very similar to reselling. Just like a recipe, you really want to break down each individual step within your business. So how to steam an item, how to photograph an item, how many times are you photographing each shot, what shots are you taking, etc. You really need to create standard operating procedures that are thought through with intention, that are audited for your time, so that you know how much time you're spending on each task, you know what you need for each task, you can provide yourself with the resources necessary, and you can just maximize efficiency and really set yourself up for success. But for reselling purposes, we not only want to know how to get from point A to Z, but also how to get from point A to Z at scale. So let's go back to the cookie analogy. Let's say instead of 12 cookies, we want to bake 1,000 cookies. The general instructions or the general steps would remain the same, but we'd have new constraints, or what are known as bottlenecks. So it would probably be easy to procure enough flour, butter, etc., but our new bottleneck could be the size of our electric mixer, or it could be how many ovens that we have. The same goes for reselling. Creating systems that account for and are specifically designed around these bottlenecks is really incredibly important if we want to achieve our goal. In reselling, there are certain activities that are bottlenecks. For instance, our storage space may be a bottleneck to growth because we have a limited capacity of where we can put our stuff. Or perhaps our photography setup is a bottleneck since only one person could be working there at a time. With most bottlenecks, the solution is pretty easy. It's just get more, get more storage, get more photography setups, or in the cooking example, get another electric mixer or get another oven. But there are certain bottlenecks that exist not just because you have a limited amount of things, but because you have a limited amount of expertise or skill. And this leads me to my third takeaway that I wanted to make here in this video, and that is the value of hiring. Again, one of the great things about reselling, unlike other businesses, is that many of the necessary tasks involved are easily trainable. So activities like steaming or inventorying are very time consuming, but virtually anyone could do them. And so by hiring, training, and delegating the tasks that anyone can do, you can lean fully into the ones that require a higher degree of skill or knowledge. And coincidentally, those tasks are also the ones that I enjoy the most. And that's basically what I focus on now, is sourcing, and then I edit the listing drafts that my virtual assistant creates. And the rest of the tasks I've really delegated. And that wasn't easy for me. I had been doing everything myself for so long that I really actually kind of felt like I had to be in control and be involved in every single task. But in doing so, I ultimately was the bottleneck of my business. And it's really become clear to me this year that the more I can set my ego aside and remove myself from my business, the more it can grow. But hiring and delegating is also difficult because it requires you to really shift from being self-employed to being a manager. And being a manager requires an entirely different set of skills, primarily organization and communication. Hiring also forces you to systematize your entire business. It forces you to break down every single part and anticipate what could go wrong. It also forces you just to be okay with mistakes and with errors, because when you're training someone, those things are inevitable. And in the short term, the training process actually forces you to cut back or decrease on your output. And you can really see that in my business. If you go back and watch the videos, during the month of June, I actually tried to hire a second employee, and I hired my virtual assistant. And this forced me to slow down, create training manuals, and develop those standard operating procedures. And doing all of that really resulted in a decrease in sales. But it also opened up that in the long run, I was able to have such a massive return on that investment and really grow a lot from that point on. For a variety of reasons, hiring is an investment that everyone who is watching this will be able to or willing to make. And that's totally okay. But if you can, you will have a competitive advantage in the marketplace, and you'll just be able to grow so much more sustainably and be able to really just maintain your sanity in the process. But it's really a responsibility, and it's something that you need to take seriously and do your due diligence with. But I promise you the effort will pay off if you do choose to make that an investment. Okay, so those are the three takeaways. The value of understanding opportunity cost, systematization, which includes your bottlenecks, and the value of hiring, training, and delegating. These are the three things that really allowed me to develop my reselling business, and they're topics that you'll probably hear me circle back to time and time again in 2021. But the last thing that I want to cover in this video is why I'm no longer going to be reporting the monthly sales numbers like I have this year. And y'all really wanted me to discuss this, so I will. The first thing is that I think I've accomplished what I really set out to accomplish. Back in late 2019, when I was taking YouTube seriously again, I was looking around at the reseller landscape and realized that no one was really doing this. I was someone who really wanted to grow my reselling business, but I didn't have anyone on YouTube who also was aggressively looking to grow their reselling business and was also being transparent with what that looked like from a numbers perspective. And so I believed that by showing my growth, I could offer what I had been personally looking for and what I thought was missing. But after 10 months of sharing this growth, I really think I've accomplished that. And I think what I've shared has shown that growth is possible. And I've also shown what it looks like month to month and what it looks like from a realistic standpoint. And at this point, I just feel like a broken record when I come up here and talk about my numbers. And I just feel like the content is getting a little bit stale. If you don't believe that growth in reselling is possible at this point, you know, I don't know that you ever will. And there are certainly people out there who will find any reason under the sun to dismiss our results. But since I'm coming up here and I'm saying a lot of the same things each month, it sometimes just feels like I'm really not doing much other than sitting up here and just bragging about our growth. And that was never my intention. That's really never why I wanted to create these videos. But honestly, the number one reason for me wanting to stop these videos is privacy. Because putting something as intimate as what your business makes each month on the internet, it comes with consequences, and they're consequences that I didn't really know before I did these videos. Because not only are y'all seeing this information, but so are our friends, our family members, our employees, our customers potentially, basically anyone can see this information. And when you talk about money on the internet, how do I put this? You open yourself up to different risks, liabilities, and interrelational dynamic shifts. Not only that, but reporting your numbers month after month can really actually create misaligned incentives. Like I was talking about earlier, long-term growth usually comes with some kind of short-term inefficiencies or financial setbacks or just decreased output. And so these YouTube videos feel like I'm the CEO of a publicly traded company that's required to report my earnings numbers to my shareholders. I mean, it's not that obviously, but sometimes it feels like that. This can often lead to an unhealthy obsession with short-term growth while ignoring long-term consequences or long-term opportunities. And so those are really my main three reasons why I want to stop making these videos. The first one being, I think I've really shared enough to accomplish the goal I set out to do when I wanted to make these videos. And then the second one is just in order to mitigate any potential liabilities, I think it's really smart to maintain a degree of privacy for yourself and for your business. And then the third one is that I think it can oftentimes just push me to focus too much on the short term, because whenever I want to scale back output, the first thing I think of is, oh my god, my YouTube numbers, and that's really not where my priority should be. But with all that being said, I still want to share different milestones that I reach in my business, and I also want to find a way to discuss numbers in a way that's helpful for y'all and also just healthy for me and healthy for my business. So I am in 2021 gonna find a way to do that either here or on some other platform. But if anything, not sharing my numbers makes me even more emboldened to take big risks and try new things. So I think our growth in 2021 is going to be really, really exciting, and I can't wait to see what happens. And so I'll definitely find a way to share that with y'all. And not only that, but we're actually planning a lot of great content for this channel. Plus, I'm launching a podcast this year as well as other exciting projects. And so overall, I'm just really proud of how our financial numbers turned out in 2020. I'm proud of the growth that we had, and I'm excited for 2021, especially in the face of all the difficulties that so many of us or all of us had this year. But I hope this video has been helpful to y'all in some way. I just really want you to know how grateful I am to be a part of this community. I mean, y'all honestly inspire me every single day. And I truly think, honestly, this is the best community on the internet. And so just thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for being here and being, in my life and a part of this whole crazy thing called reselling and crazy thing called life. So with that being said, Happy New Year. I am sending you so much love, and I'll see y'all in the next one. Okay, bye. Ooh, one last thing. To ring in the new year, why didn't y'all go ahead and click the subscribe button? And then you can click that little bell if you want to be notified every time we post a new video. Also, I'd be so grateful if you gave this video a thumbs up, and while you're at it, check out one of these other videos linked up on the screen. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see y'all in the next one. Okay, bye.